It's time for a special episode of Happy Landings with your host, Jay Nowak.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, what I got to talk about today is that here on Happy Landings, I personally feel that diving into the past should once again give us a bit more hope and a bit more justice for the future. Something that could very much do greatness for each of us. So today, why don't I take you back to some point in the past where I had my very first ever job done as part of actual employment within the community. The first job I ever had took place inside of a Central European themed restaurant called the Schwabenhof. And that place, let me tell you, it certainly has been a pretty big tradition when it comes to handling all sorts of European style events, including an Oktoberfest session that happens every October, of course. But at the same time, why don't I go ahead and talk with you about some pretty awesome things that happened. For the most part, during the almost 8 months that I've worked there, from April to November of 2016, I was mostly their dishwasher and a metal polisher on certain occasions. And I would also help to slice up lemons with a lemon squeezer, as well as making chocolate and strawberry milk or flavored milks of any sorts. But for the most part, it was just dishes and polishing. That was pretty much it. Nothing more to say about that point, but to pretty much just conceive of these memories here that I've had from nearly 4 years in the past now would certainly be not so much of a chore, because it certainly wasn't that long ago. But let me go on ahead and talk with you about a couple things that I thought was pretty funny. Because at one point, during October of 2016, close to the time where I would be scheduled for a leave, would be a time where an argument would pretty much take place that would involve a few of us. There were at least 4 of us still in the kitchen by the time that it was 11 p.m. But around that point in time, that same month, I was no longer able to work past 11 p.m. due to a time-strained consideration that took place. Of course, I was still a 17-year-old at the time, still making me a minor at the time. But what happened was that by the end of the month of October 2016, I had stayed there until 2:30 a.m. No joke. I was there for that long. Of course, normally my shifts would start from 4 and end at around 11 or 11:30. But that's mostly dependent on the fact that, well, most of the time I've happened to have some things that take place, but usually I do happen to go there at least once a week. And I happen to get a paycheck every single month. That of which happened to go up higher and higher as time went on, and I can certainly tell you that I've made about $2,000 in total from the time I started to the time that I ended. But what I can tell you for certain is that, for the most part, that job was actually kind of a strenuous and quite so active way to go. Despite the many things that would happen to take place, and despite how simple some of the tasks were that had to be taken care of, I certainly had a lot to do there. And there really wasn't that much else for me to expect, but I certainly could get around the fact that there were tons of things going around during those times. Business, of course, was doing very well at the time that I started working there, and up until the point where I had to resign, just so I could find a better job. But of course, I guess I'll probably talk more about that job later. But going back to the Schwabenhof employment that I had for nearly 8 months, of course, that same month in October 2016, sometime before that change to my employment had to be made to ensure that I would no longer have to stay until the earliest hours of the morning time, which had happened only once, but eventually the time itself had to pretty much change just so I would no longer happen to have all of this dilemma come into place. And liability upon the fact that I was still a minor at the time was kind of a big deal. So, of course, making a minor work until that early in the morning, when a minor's already worked long enough, probably wouldn't have been the best idea to go, but I guess it only had to happen once, at least. But going back to October 2016 before that time, arguments, of course, were getting quite common. Some of my other coworkers that I've had there during that time were kind of starting to get really agitated about some of these things. At one point, a coworker of mine named Tyler actually went to the point where, from what I remember the most, at one point in October 2016, I actually heard Tyler say something like, "No, effing pants." That was pretty funny right there. But of course, it actually got a lot better, because once again, there were a few of us that were still inside the building at the time that we were supposed to all get ready to go home. Of course, we were almost done with our mopping and the like, and eventually, by the time we ran out of stuff to do, Tyler once again started to become enraged and just straight up yelled at us. From what I remember, Tyler's exact words were, "Everybody effing get some stuff done around here and quit acting like little turds." That right there, that was the one that pretty much made me die of laughter. It's still quite funny to say the least. It was pretty freaking funny. No joke. Of course, I don't really know what this Tyler of mine that I had at the time is up to today, nor are any of my other coworkers, including Jim, John, Angel, Noah, Polly, and all those other people out there that I've come to know about, and, well, I don't even know what they're up to today. But I am actually hoping that we could cross paths of some sort at some time. But regardless of how long it's been since the last time I've seen them and whether I'll get to see them again or not, I'm certainly going to at least hope that from now on, I do happen to use some of these times as a learning tool and as tips for regarding what happens in the present, which is today. Of course, my employment with the Marcus Staters program is still a joint operation, so that way Kaiju Force Neo can get itself a good profiting in its margins, so think of it as like a big sponsorship. But as of now, I don't think there's a lot coming on, and it's certainly because of this nCoV epidemic that's progressed to a pandemic, so there's a big difference between the two. But anyways, I guess now would be the right time to go ahead and I guess calm myself down from all this drama, because it's really progressing. Death tolls are getting higher, accompanied by the fact that a vaccine may be a long ways away. And if that's the case, then well, let's just sincerely hope that anything goes on can really get done around here. Thank you very much. Good night.